Court of Justice has paved the way for morbidly obese workers to be protected in law and to force employers to make allowances for them, like giving them nearby parking spaces, specially adjusted desks, less physical tasks. Quite right, says Fatima Parker.
It is a good law that would protect fat people, especially if people are unwell, if they're disabled and they can't move, protection is needed. We live in a world that worships thin and hates and loathes fat.
Well, not a lot of love for that view on our Facebook page. Sarah Winton says this is ridiculous and offensive to people who have a genuine disability, which is not self-inflicted. If someone has a high BMI, then they should do something about it. If they're too fat to do a job, they need to lose weight. For example, an obese air hostess would not be practical or safe on a plane. Paul McCluskey is more brief. Go on a diet.
0500 92 95 00. Morning Call on BBC Radio Scotland.
Right, before we get into all the fun of the fair with Brian Burnett, I'm asking you if you think that being extremely fat can ever be regarded as the same as being disabled. This question's been raised after a morbidly obese Danish childminder claimed unfair dismissal. He said that he was fired for being too fat to get down and tie shoelaces, and the case did make it to the European Court of Justice. And a preliminary ruling was made that in extreme cases, obesity could be regarded as a disability. And we were speaking to Giles Wilson, who's an employment lawyer, and he's been explaining that if the obese person was able to prove that their weight caused a physical impairment, then they would potentially have a case to ask an employer to make allowances for them. And he gave us a scenario whereby somebody perhaps was in a sales job that required them to be on their feet all day and maybe have a target of 10 sales on that given day. But if they were unable to take the kind of physical pressure of that and maybe had to have a wee rest, 10 minutes every hour or so, then potentially it would be reasonable for them to ask for their sales target to be reduced to 7 sales a day rather than 10 because their physical condition made it difficult for them to fulfill the same kind of level of commitment. So there's a wee example for you how obesity could be regarded as a physical impairment in the workplace. Do you think an employer should be taking that on board or not? 0500 92 95 00 is the number to call. A lot of people getting in touch to say it is not a real disability in that terms because it is indeed self-inflicted. So let's speak to Fatima Parker, who's a size acceptance campaigner. Morning to you, Fatima.
Good morning, Kaye.
Good morning. We heard briefly from you earlier this morning, in which case you said that you're very pleased to hear about this ruling, and you do think that this is something that could be, a good thing for people who struggle with their weight at the upper end.
I wish that it wasn't connected or taken from the disability laws that we have to have independent protection for people who are not a size 0, let's say, who are not slim, to be protected, to be able to find a job and to get employment, to not get bullied, to be treated with respect in the workplace and even in society. I mean, you see from what I see on the internet now and from the messages that you get, most people are upset about it and they hate it because fat is hated, and being fat is always thought of as a self-inflicted condition, and that people shouldn't be treated with respect or given a job or even have the sympathy of having a disability or a disease.
Are you suggesting, Fatima, that there is widespread discrimination?
Oh, very much so. And the studies are there and the evidence is very clear and can be seen anywhere. Just search on the internet.
Can you give me an example?
There are plenty of I have pages on Facebook where I have people writing to me about all the problems that they get, and it's not only a UK problem; it's a worldwide problem.
Right.
Fat is hated, and when I say fat, I'm not talking about 25 stone. I'm talking about size 6, a size 8. Now, if a size 12
Okay.
is considered a plus size, where are we going to go from there?
Well, I mean, you say you've had lots of letters from across the world. It'd be really interesting this morning to hear from listeners if they do feel that being overweight in any sense leads to discrimination in the workplace. And 0500 92 95 00 is the number to call on that. But just to bring you to this particular situation, Fatima, what we're talking about here, people who are described as morbidly obese, which would be having a BMI, body mass index, of 40 plus, which is very much at the upper end of the scale, and that potentially someone in that situation in the workplace, if their weight meant that they had a physical impairment, then they should be regarded as having a disability and be afforded the protections that anyone with a disability would have. As I said, a lot of the reaction that we've been getting this morning is, no, you cannot equate self-inflicted obesity with somebody who has what would be regarded as a genuine disability. What is your response to that?
You see, even the disability law itself says that self-inflicted or not, if someone has, if this law passes, if you are obese, morbidly obese, or 25, 30 stone, and you have a correlation of disease and a correlation of disability due to your size, because let's not forget that sumo wrestlers and athletes, some of them are very, very big, you see, and they're still athletes and they're not disabled. You can't call a sumo wrestler a disabled obese. So if as I said, they have a disability or they have underlying conditions that are making them unable to do the job that they're supposed to do, this law would ignore that it has been self-inflicted. That these people got obese because they've eaten too much. I support it, yes, because why should somebody of an average weight be considered disabled with an ailment or with a disease, let's say diabetes or any other diseases like there are plenty of other diseases that we cannot see. They're not in a wheelchair, but they are allowed to be disabled. But someone who is fat and has the same diseases or the same problems that are causing them to be unable to do their job properly is not allowed because it's discrimination.
All right. Okay, Fatima, we're looking for reaction for that this morning. 0500 92 95 00. And Ronnie, listen, thank you. Nice to speak to you, an alternative point of view. Let me come back to Fatima there. Fatima, you heard Morag's sense of outrage, that her grandson, and she gave the example, who, sounds as if he's got a very tough time indeed with what most people would regard as a undeniable, straightforward disability.
Yes,
and she's outraged that somebody who, in her view, eats themselves to a point of disability should be regarded in the same category.
As the gentleman who called last said, that in this law, if it passes, the self-inflicting aspect of it is not going to be regarded. It's the same as a young man or a woman who has driven very fast and caused themselves, they cause their disability. That is regarded as self-inflicted too. But
but should it not be, Fatima?
Then the same thing would go on. As I said, we do not. As in our group of size acceptance, we do not want obesity to be considered as a disability. It is a shape and size. What we would like to see is an anti-discrimination against fat people from the zero start of what is meant to be fat till very morbidly obese. When you become bedridden because you've been discriminated against all your life and you've been thrown out and you're not given a job, then they start shouting and saying, oh yeah, all these obese people are costing the NHS a lot of money and the society. Let's have these, instead of hiding or trying to be protected under the obesity laws, the protection laws, let's have discrimination acts against people who will discriminate against fat people, against the size of, fat or tall or short. Let's add this to protecting people and giving them jobs and accommodating them. If you have someone who is bigger and your office is built for average size, that you'll make accommodation for that employee. Okay. But many fat people are not given the chance. If you have two people come and apply for a job, a thin and a fat, even the if the fat person is better qualified, they're not given the job because there is this discrimination and this idea that they're very bad and they won't do the job properly.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we would have to rely on anecdotal evidence for that.
There is plenty of evidence.
Yeah, I'm sure,
yes.
and I would love to hear it this morning if anyone has.
There is. Please just look on the internet, come to my sites, my pages on Facebook, and we have associations like NAFA. We have associations like Health at Every Size, and all the data is there.
Okay, Fatima, let me just get a legal perspective on that, and then I'm going to speak to Stephen and Finlay. I have to watch my time. Giles, are you aware of anyone having taken an anti-discrimination or a discrimination case on the basis of weight?
Yeah, well, there was a case actually. You know, you've mentioned the Danish case, and there was a case in the UK called Walker. It was actually Walker against. I don't recall the name of the company it was against, but that was back in 2013, where the court in the UK said, very similar to this preliminary opinion in the European court, that obesity can potentially be a disability. So that is the law as it currently stands in the UK, and I've been listening with interest to these comments. A lot of very interesting comments there, and the law does not currently cover the sort of self-inflicted point. And I imagine there could be a whole host of reasons for that, because as one of your callers mentioned, there could be any number of reasons why a particular person is obese. Somebody could be overeating because of emotional or other personal issues. In other words, it's not. I don't imagine it's always simply a case of, I'm just going to simply choose to overeat. There could be any number of reasons for that. Somebody may be suffering from depression, and as a result, they're overeating. So there are complex questions there.
But the distinction that Fatima makes, and she's saying that she doesn't want morbid obesity to be viewed as a disability. What she would like is a more straightforward anti-discrimination, that you do not discriminate against people on the basis of their size. Could you ever see that working?
Well, to be honest, I think that's more of a labelling issue. The term disability for the purposes of the Equality Act, now this is different from things like disability living allowance. It's two different things, okay? For the purposes of the Equality Act, there's a whole host of conditions which qualify as being a disability, even though the person may not view themselves as disabled. For example, I'll give you an example of that. See, people who have significant visual impairments or even who are blind, they are classed as disabled under the Equality Act, but a number of people who are blind would not want themselves to be considered to be disabled because it has certain connotations. So I think that the term disability, the way the law is set up, the way the legislation is written, that term needs to be used. But it's important to remember that can cover a whole host of conditions, even where people might say to themselves, well, I don't feel like I am disabled in the sort of traditional sense of the word. Yeah,
and actually in an area we probably are not going to have time to get into this morning, but it was Dawn who phoned earlier to say that she felt that be particularly unhelpful for people who are struggling with their weight to look in the mirror and view myself as disabled rather than somebody who can make a real change to their outlook. Giles Wilson, thank you very much indeed. I'm going to rattle through